Hello everybody, Jesse here from Jess-Inspired. Alright, it's the third part of the Sunnyside landing page challenge, and today I'll be building everything right here from the client testimonial section down to the footer section. And in keeping with this, if you haven't seen the first two videos, I strongly recommend you go check them out. There should be cards in this video popping up to redirect you right there, and I'm also going to link them in the description below. And if you like what we do, go ahead and give us a thumbs up, okay? And make sure to subscribe for more web dev content like this. So without further ado, let's just jump right into the business of today. All right, so before I design, I'd like to give a breakdown of the various sections we'll be designing. So this whole highlighted area, which you see right here, represents the testimonial section. And the testimonial section is going to have two children. Number one is the client testimonial header, which you see right here. Number two is this whole grid container, which you see right here. And now this grid container is in turn going to have three children represented by these boxes. So this first box represents the first child, the second box represents the second child, and the third box represents the third child. Now each of these boxes are in turn going to have three children, which I'm going to show you right now. So the images represents the first child. This text, which you see right here, represents the second child, and this other text, which you see right here, represents the third child. So just in case you're having a hard time understanding what I'm doing, I'm going to show you what I mean in my HTML. Alright, so to get started, I'm just going to have the section elements, and I'm going to give it the class of testimonial section, just like that. Okay, and I said testimonial section is going to have two children. Number one is the header, so I'm going to give it the class of testimonial header, and it's going to have an additional class right here of headers. And just in case you don't know what I'm doing, is feel free to check the second video. There should be a card right now popping up to redirect you right there, so it's well explained in detail there. And then I told you that the testimonial section is going to have two children. Number one is the header, and then number two is this grid, which contains these three boxes. So I'm just going to give it a class of testimonial grid, just like that. And testimonial grid is going to have three children. Number one, each of them are going to have a class of testimonial grid items. Testimonial grid items times 3. All right, so right here in the testimonial head, I'm just going to write client testimonials, because that's what's right here. Client testimonials. I'm just going to write it here. So let me just copy it, and then I can just paste it right here. Control V. That's the client testimonials. Okay, so that's done. Next, I want to style this first child right here. So before I go on, any style I apply here, I'm just going to repeat the same to these other ones, because it's still the same structure, right? So I'm just going to style one, and then I'll pause the video and then come back. So feel free to follow this one, because it's exactly the same thing I'll be doing for these other two children grid items right here. So first things first, I have this image, so I'm just going to write an img tag right here, and I'm going to give it a class of clients images. And this first one is in my image folder, img. I'm going to write slash image Emily, okay, because that's her name, Emily, right here. She's a marketing director. All right, so having done that, the next thing I want to add is this text right here. And I'm going to give that this text right here a class of testimonies. All right, so because it's the actual testimonies you're getting from the clients, I'm just going to give it a class of testimonies, and I can just copy this right here, so I don't have to type it. I could just copy this and then paste it right here. Okay, so just like that. So everything seems good for now. Having done this, I want to also get this other text right here. So this Emily Aaron, this marketing director, which you see right here. And in order to do this, I'm just going to create a class. I'm going to call it client identity. All right, so client identity. I'm calling it client identity because it has both the name and the title. All right, or the position of the client. So the first one, I'm going to give it the class of client names. A first div, I'm going to give it the class of client names, and I'm going to put right there Emily R full stop. And then the second one, I'm going to give it the class of client position. All right, client position, just like that. And then I'm gonna write in the marketing director. All right, so everything looks good for now. Now if I check this out in the browser, you see I have it right here. So I'm just going to repeat the same for these other images, and then I'm going to come back right now to the video. All right, so I've been able to repeat the same process which you see right here for the other two grid items. So I have this one for Thomas, and then I have this one for Jenny F. So everything looks good for now. So I'm done with the HTML right now for the testimonial section. So I'll be jumping right into my CSS to show you how to style this. Okay. All right, so I'm in my CSS right now, and the first thing I want to do is I just want to comment my code. All right, to indicate the beginning of my testimonial styling, just like that. Having done that, I want to start the testimonial section proper, which represents the whole section. So I'm just going to write testimonial section because that's the class selector. And the first thing I want to do is that I want to put some paddings at the top and at the bottom, so it's not clustered to the previous section, which is the main section, and also to the next section which we'll be designing later. So I'm just going to add some paddings at the top and at the bottom, like this, padding of 5 rem at the top and at the bottom, and then 0 right here. So if I do this, what's just going to happen, I have some spaces right here. Having done that, I want to create some spaces between the client header and this testimonials grid. So there are a bunch of ways to do this, but one way I like is to set a display of flex and the flex direction of column. So if I do this, nothing would seem to happen, but right now I can control the spaces between by simply setting a property of row gap and a value of 2 rem in this case. And watch what's going to happen. I have my spaces right there, just like that. Having done that, next thing I want to do is that I want to change the font family, okay, to have the same font family of body fonts. So I'm going to set the font family of our body font, just like that. So once I do that, what's just going to happen, it just changes, just like that. Now, having done that, I want to set the background color, okay. I want to change the background color to var floral white. All right, so it's a little bit off-white, just slightly off-white, so everything looks good for now. All right, so the next thing on my list is my testimonial header. So I'm just going to write testimonial header because that's the class selector. So having done that, the first thing I want to do is I want to center this guy right here. So I could just write a simple text align center, just like that. Good. So having done that, the next thing I want to do is I want to set a color right here. I'm going to change the color. If you realize the color is different from this one, which I have right here in the original. So I'm just going to set the color of our grayish blue. All right, so that's the color. So once I click save, what is going to happen, voila, it changes. All right, so next I want to start my testimonial grid. So I'll just simply write the class selector, just like that, and I'm going to give it a display of grid, and nothing will seem to happen if I click save, but I'm going to show you in the application right now. I'm going to set the grid template columns. All right, so this is a pretty fun property. I'm going to give it, it's going to have 2 values. Number one is this auto fit, and then it's going to have a min max of 20 rem and 20%. Okay, so in case you have your eyebrows being raised because of these properties and this seems a little bit tricky for you, feel free to drop a comment, you know, in the comment section below, or basically any part of this project that you find a little bit confusing, please go ahead and drop a comment for me, okay? But basically what this does is that it's going to repeat my columns, all right, and it's going to help me auto fit it into the space which I have right now. And each of these columns will have a minimum value of 20 rem and a maximum value of 20%. All right, so it's going to create automatic columns for me, automatic rows rather, according to the size of my space, and then each of those columns or each of those boxes will have a minimum value of 20 rem and a maximum value of 20%. So once I click save, what's going to happen, so right now you realize because of the kind of space I have, I'm having 2 columns right now, and then it's creating an extra row right here to accommodate for this guy. And then if I maximize my screen, what is going to happen, I'm now going to have 3 rows. So that looks good for now. I hope that makes sense. Now before I go on, maybe if you try this on your system and it doesn't work, you probably have an older version of your browser, probably if it's Chrome or Internet Explorer or Edge or Safari. So go ahead and install the latest version, and then this auto fit property will begin to work. All right, so just in case you don't have that issue, then you just code along with me. All right, so justify content is the next property I'm going to set. And why am I setting this? Now when I resize my screen to become to have this dimension, this property may not make so much sense, but if I maximize my screen, realize that I have these extra spaces. So right now I want to distribute these extra spaces. I want them to be distributed evenly. All right, so that's why I'm setting this property right now, and I'm going to give it space evenly. So once I do that, boom, you see now I have even spaces between my grid items. So having done that, right now because I have a display of grid, I can easily set a row gap and a column gap. Okay, so I'm going to set a column gap of 0.5 rem. So no matter how much I squeeze my viewports or I resize my viewports, I'm still going to have a space between the columns of 0.5 rem. I'm going to set a row gap of 3 rem. All right, so right now I'm going to have some spaces between the rows of 3 rem. So once I click save, what's just going to happen? So everything looks good for now. I have my spaces and everything looks good for now. So we're making a lot of progress. The next thing I want to style is my testimonial grid items. All right, so if I do that right now, I'm just going to give it the display of grid. Okay, and nothing would seem to happen, but right now I can set some grid container properties on it, like justify items. So if I do this, I could say justify items of center. So you see right now the items are centered right now, but you realize that my text is not centered. All right, so let me just show you the original. So this is what I have here in the original. So I'm trying to imitate this right now. So my text is not centered. It's still here at the start of my grid container. So I'm going to set the text align to rectify that, the text align of center. So once I do this, what's going to happen? My text is centered right here inside the grid container. So everything looks good for now. Then having done this, I also want to set the gap of 1.5 rem. So I'm going to have a gap of 1.5 rem both on the row and on the column. So once I click save, you realize that I have these beautiful spaces between my grid items. So this looks good for now. So right now I'll be going ahead to start my client identity div, which comprises of both my client names and my client position, which is here right here. So this is my whole client identity div. It comprises of my client names, which is here right here, the names, and then their positions. All right, so I'll just simply specify right here in my CSS, all right, client identity. And the first thing I want to do is that I want to move it a little bit downwards, just a little bit downwards. So I'm going to set a margin top of 0.5 rem just to move it a little bit downwards. And then I'm going to give it a display of grid. So once I do that, nothing would seem to happen, but the implication is that I can now set my row gap. So I can set a row gap of something like 0.5 rem between my client names and then my client position. So you see that row gap right there appearing. So having done that, I can also work on my client images, because my client images right now are pretty big, which you see compared to this guy right here. So I want to make my client images much more smaller, and also want to make them have a rounded border. All right, so right now I have this square rectangle border, which is here right here. So I'm going to work on it right now by simply setting a width of 6 rem. So if I set the width of 6 rem, it's going to look much more smaller, just like this. And I'm also going to give it a border radius, or the radius of 50%. So once I do this, what's just going to happen? So I have my beautiful images all rounded, just like this one. So next on my list right here is my client name. So I want to style my client name. So if I compare it with this one, which I have right here, realize that this one has a font width of bold, and it also has a different font family from the client position, which I have right here. So I'm going to touch that right now. So I'm just going to specify client names right here, client names. And I'm going to give it a font width of bold, just like that. So once I do that, I realize that I have my font width of bold, just like that. And then I'm also going to set a font family of var header fonts. Okay, header fonts. So once I click this, realize my font family has changed, and also the font width has changed for my client name. So that looks good for now. But you realize that my client position right now has a different color from what I have right here. So I'm also going to touch the color. So I'll just come right here. I'm going to write client position, and I'm going to give it a color of var grayish blue. So once I do that, I realize, oh, that looks good for now. So I have my client color, the client position, the color looking the same with this guy, and every other thing basically looks exactly like this. So that's all for the testimonial section. So let's now jump into the showcase section. All right, so we're making a lot of progress. Next, I want to show you how to start what I call the showcase section. Now, I'm calling the showcase section because basically it just displays or showcases the products of Sunnyside. So here you're seeing the products of Sunnyside, and basically it's a very simple section because it just has 4 children, and each of these 4 children are images. So right now, if I the whole section you see highlighted on your screen represents what I call the showcase section, and like I said, it has 4 children, and each of these children are images. So if I hover over this is the first child, here's the second child, this is the third child, and this right here is the 4th child. And another thing to note is that at larger viewports, you realize that I have a 4-column layout, but if I resize my screen to smaller viewports, you realize that I have a 2-column layout. And then if I resize it, you realize that the images are also responsive with the viewports. All right, so the images are also responsive. So quickly, let me just jump right into VS Code and show you how to write this. Right, so I'm in VS Code right now, and to get started, I'm just going to create a section tag, and I'm going to give it a class of showcase section. All right, so that's done. Like I said, it has 4 children, and each of these children are images. So I'm just going to write my image tag, and then I'm going to give it a class of showcase images. All right, and I'm going to make them 4. All right, so once I do that, I realize that I have 4 img tags right here. So that looks good for now. So having done this right now, I'm just going to fill in the source of each of these images right now. So I'm going to pause my video and then get back to you so I don't have to waste your time. Okay. All right, so here we go. I've been able to insert my images. I've been able to insert their sources. So if I click save, you realize what happens. I have my images right here. So everything looks a little bit robust, extra large if you like. So our images look a little bit, you know, extra large, but it's okay. We're going to style it right now. So in order to get started, I'm just going to jump right to my CSS. So before I begin, I like to comment my code for the sake of readability. So I'm just going to write here showcase section styling. All right, so the next thing I want to do, I want to touch my images because they look, you know, a little bit too big. Not a little bit too big, they look extra large. So I'm going to give it a width of 100%, and I'm going to give it a height of clamp 10 rem, 30 vmax, and 20 rem. All right, so once I do that, I realize what's happening right now to my images. They are stacked vertically, okay, but I want them to be stacked horizontally, just like this, and I want them to be responsive. So there are a bunch of ways to do this, but one way I could do this is that I could make my showcase section a grid container. So by simply setting a display of grid. So once I do that, right now I can determine the columns of this grid container by simply specifying this grid template columns, and I'm going to put repeat right here, and I'm going to say for 1fr. So what it's going to do is that it's going to divide each of these spaces which you're seeing right here, or this entire space which you're seeing right here, is going to separate it into 4 different parts. So 1fr means, you know, it's a fraction, so it's like 1/4. So each of these images will be 1/4 of the available space. Okay, so once I click save, realize what just happened. Wow, it's great. Each of my images have become 1/4 of the available space. So if I also maximize my screen, realize that it also is responsive with my screen because it's taking 1/4 of the available space. But the issue with this is that if I begin to resize my screen at smaller viewports, like I'm doing right now, if I resize my screen, realize that it always occupies 1/4 of the available space. But I want it to be that at smaller viewports, at a set breakpoint, it should occupy 1/2. That's half of the available space. So let me just share what I mean in the original. So right here, if I resize my screen at smaller viewports, realize what's going to happen. You see that right now I have this 2-column layout, all right, as opposed to the 4-column layout which I have right now. But at this in this particular one I'm designing, no matter how much I resize it, I still have this 4-column layout. So I'm going to show you how to rectify this right now using some media queries. All right, so I'm going to come right here to my responsive viewer section, or my responsive section, which I designed prior to this time in the previous videos, and I'm going to comment my code right here to indicate the start of the responsive showcase section. So responsive showcase section, I'm just going to write that right now. Then having done that, I want to change the grid template columns right now at this breakpoint of 639 px. So at this breakpoint, I want it to be that I have a repeat of 2. Means I'm going to have my grid items occupying half of the space. It's no longer 1/4, and then I want each of them be still the same 1fr. All right, so if I click save, what is going to happen? Bullseye. So right now I have my grid items occupying half, and just in case it can't totally fill up this space, what happens is that it's going to create some extra columns right now, and each of them will still have 2 columns, or an extra row, which you see right here. So this is an extra row, and this extra row will still have 2 columns right now. Okay, so if I had an extra image, it's going to create an extra row at the bottom. Okay, so it's going to continue and follow this pattern of 2 columns, each of them having half, or occupying half of the available space. So that's all for the responsive showcase section. So let's now jump right into the footer section. So finally, I'm going to be designing the footer section, and then the footer section basically comprises of everything you see highlighted right now. So everything you see highlighted on the screen represents the footer section. and the footer section has 3 children. The first child is the footer header, which you can see right here. The second child is the container for the footer links, which you see, and then the third child is the container for the social media icons, which you can see right here. Now the container for the footer links has 3 children in it. The first child is this about link, services link is the second, and projects link is the third. Just routine, isn't it? And then the container for the social media icons has in it 4 children, which you can see right here. So the first child is this icon right here, this Facebook icon. Then you have the Instagram icon as the second child, the Twitter, and then the Pinterest. All right, so let me just show you what I mean right now in HTML. So I'm in my HTML right now, and to get started, I'm just going to create a footer element, and I'm going to give it the class of footer. Okay, just like that. And like I said, it's going to have 3 children. The first child will be a header. I'm just going to create a H2. I'm going to give it a class of footer header. All right, and in it, I'm going to write Sunnyside, just like we have right here. Sunnyside. I'm just going to write Sunnyside. All right, so I'm going to save, and here we go. So I have my Sunnyside showing up right here. And then next, I'm going to create these links. Okay, so I'm just going to have a div. I'm going to call this div footer links container. Just like that. All right, so this link, I want it to have how many children? 3 children, which you see right there. And I want them to be 8 tags. And I want them to have a class of footer links, just like that. And I want them to be 3. So once I do that, now I have my footer links. Okay, so all I need to do is that I need to just embed the text inside. So I'll write here about, here I write services, and here I'll write projects. So having done that, the next thing I want to create is the container for my social media icon. So I'm just going to have a div. I'm going to call it social media container. All right, so I wanted to have how many children? 3 children, and each of these things are actually images. All right, so I got them from frontendmentor.io. So I'm just going to have my img. I'm going to give them a class of social media icons. All right, and I want them to be 4. All right, so once I press tab, I'm going to create them. Okay, so I have my img right now. I'm going to pause my video, and then I'm going to fill this source attributes so that and then I'll get back to you. All right, so I've been able to insert the source of my images right now. So we have the first one, img. Here's the name icon, Facebook, for Facebook. I have for Instagram, I have for Twitter right here, and then I have for Pinterest. All right, so I'm done with my HTML. So let's just go right into CSS and style this. I'm in CSS right now. Just to get started, as usual, I'm just going to comment my code. I'm going to write footer style, just like that. Now I'm going to style the footer section proper. So I'm going to give it a display of grid. All right, and I'm going to give it a justify content of center. So once I do this, realize right now it's centered in the main axis. Having done that, I also want to realize that my text, though it's centered, yet it's at the start of each row. And maybe what I'm saying doesn't make sense, but let me just specify this property and then show you the difference. If I set the text align of center, what was going to happen? Realize that right now my text is centered inside each row. So if I comment this out, it goes back to the start, and if I uncomment it, it goes to the center. All right, so that looks good for now. So having done that, and right now I want to increase the height of my footer section. Okay, so it's somewhat like what I have right here. And then in order to do that, I'm just going to set a simple clamp function. I'm going to set a clamp with a minimum of 10 rem, a maximum of 35 VH, and a middle ground of 35 VH, and then a maximum of 15 rem, just like that. So once I do this, I realize that right now the height of my footer section has increased, but I still have a basic problem such that my grid items are aligned vertically at the start of my grid container. I can rectify this because I want them to be centered. I could rectify this by simply setting an align items property, and I could give it center, just like that. Boom. So right now it's centered perfectly inside my grid container, which is my footer. So having done that, the next thing I want to touch is my background color. Okay, so my background color here has this greenish kind of color, so I'm going to also touch that right now. So I'm going to set the background color, and I'm going to give it a var of footer BG color, just like that. All right, so once I do that, I realize I have my background color changed. Another thing that I'd like to touch is the color. All right, so I want to set a var. Right now, the color refers to the text color. I'm going to give it footer color. All right, so I'm expecting that once I do that, at least my header color should change, okay, by inheritance. So once I set this footer color, just like that, save, you see it's changed. All right, so everything looks good for now. Having done this, all right, so next thing I want to set is the font family, and I'm going to give it a var body font, just like that. So I will change the font family from the default one which I have right here to this font family which I specify right here. So once I click save, everything is changed and it looks good for now. The next thing I want to style is my footer header. So for my footer header, I'm just going to write footer header because that's the class selector I use, footer header. And then the first thing I want to change is the font size. I'm just going to change the font size to like 2 rem. All right, so it's a little bit bigger. And then I'm also going to change the font width to 900. Now, if you followed the previous, like if you realize now nothing happened because in the previous one I did for this font of Barlow, I did not import the font width of 900. Okay, so I'm just quickly going to do that right now. So in from fonts.google.com. So if you watch the second video, you should know how to do this. So go ahead and import the font of 900 and then come back and continue. Okay. All right. So once you import the font of 900 for the Barlow, all right, so from your Google fonts right here. So once you import the fonts right now, and then you have for 900, which you have right here. So you realize that right here my font width has changed, okay, because I've imported that font. So everything looks good for now. Now the next thing I want to style is my footer links and my social media container. So next I'm going to style my footer links proper. So I'm just going to write that footer links with the links. The first thing I want is that I want to change this color. All right, I want to change the color of my footer links. So I'm just going to write var footer color, just like that. So once I do that, I realize it's going to change. So having done that, let's just compare it with this one I have right here. So you realize that even though the color is changed, this one still has this thicker or bolder font width. All right, so realize this one is a little bit lighter. So I can also work on the font width simply by setting the font width property of 600. So if I do that, I realize that it looks like this other guy. But the issue is that if I hover over this guy right now, the hover effect is not going to be implemented right here because I haven't yet included the hover pseudo class to my footer links. So I'm just going to do that right now. I'm going to set my footer links and I'm going to add that hover to the class, and I'm going to say when I hover over it, the color should change. Let it change to white. All right, so if I hover over it, I should have that color change to white. I also want it to have a smooth transition effect, so I'm going to set the transition of 0.2 seconds is in and out. All right, so I'm also going to put the same right here, transition of 0.2 seconds is in and out, just like that. So if I save this and then I hover over this guy, so you realize that I have my white color on hover and then I have my smooth transitioning effect. All right, so last but not the least is my social media icons. All right, so right now I also want to create this hover effect. So if I hover over this guy, realize that it's changing just like what I have right here. But right now if I hover over this guy, it's not going to work. And let me show you something quickly. I'm going to write social media icons, isn't it? And I'm going to put hover. And if I, for example, I change the color like I did right here, will it work? Let's just check it out. So if I change it to white and I hover over it, what was going to happen? You see, it's not working. It's not working because you can't just change the color on hover for SVG files. It's not going to work. So I'm going to show you an alternative way to achieve that same effect using the filter property in CSS. So I'm just going to set a filter right now, and the first property, the first value I'm going to give is a brightness, and I'm going to set the brightness to 0. Just watch what this is going to do right now. So if I click save, if I hover over this guy right now, you realize that the color is totally black because there is no brightness in it. All the white elements or the white color has been removed from it, so it's totally black. So if I hover over it, it's totally black. Now I want it to be white, isn't it? In order to make it white, I'm going to set another value, and it's a function actually, an invert function. I'm going to set it to 100%. Now, essentially what this does is that it inverts the color which I've already specified. So for example, right now, it has a brightness of 0, and the brightness of 0 makes it black, isn't it? And therefore an inverse will invert that black by 100% and then make it white. I hope that makes sense. So if it is black because the brightness is 0, inverse will invert it 100% and make it totally white. So right now, if I hover over this guy, you realize that it's white. It's white. All right, so that's how you can be able to achieve this using SVG files. But I also want to change the cursor to a pointer, and the other one is default arrow, which I have right here. I want the finger when I hover over it, so I have it right there. So another thing I want to do is I want to add my transition effect, just a little of like 0.2 seconds in and out. All right, so I have that smooth transitioning. All right, so you see, so everything looks good for now. So practically we are done. Okay, that's it for today. Alright, if you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and give us a thumbs up, and also make sure to subscribe for more web dev content like this. So in the fourth section, I'm going to be showing how to design it with some lightweight JavaScript. So realize that once I click on this hamburger menu button, my nav card slides in from the top, and then when I click on it again, my nav card slides up back to wherever it came from. So make sure to stick around for that. And until we see next time, remember, web dev isn't hard after all.